for folks here online. So let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Adam Bernard from Auto Perspectives, president of the Society of Automotive Analysts. Welcoming you to our first Motoring Minds broadcast, talk show, podcast, whatever it is you want to call it. And the subject for this launch edition is the Beijing Auto Show, otherwise known as Auto China. And pleased to welcome our first guest, our special guest, Tu Li. He is the CEO of Sino Auto Insights, founded in 2017. It is a global mobility advisory firm helping organizations navigate the fast evolving transportation landscape. He is the voice behind the widely read SAA weekly newsletter, essential reading for anyone serious about the future of mobility, and he also co-hosts two influential podcasts, China EVs and More, and At the Wheel, where he breaks down the trends shaping the global auto and tech sectors. His career spans over 2 decades across Michigan, Silicon Valley, and China, working for both legacy automakers and big tech. So he is with us live from Shanghai. You can see all that nice neon in the background. Before we dive into it, just a couple of numbers on the show itself. If you have not been, and I haven't been for a long time, 380,000 square meters, the equivalent of more than 70 football fields, 1,451 vehicles on display, 181 global launches, and 71 concept cars. So it is now, this is the big daddy of global auto shows. A lot of discussion about what the future of auto shows is, but Beijing definitely had a lot. So Tu Li, welcome. Glad you could join us. We're all fully well connected here. Let's start with the most obvious. How did Beijing compare to Shanghai last year? There's been a lot of changes in the business.
Beijing is now the largest auto show in the world. It used to be Shanghai, but Beijing built a convention center next to the old convention center. And so there were 17 halls, and it's quite large. I was at the show twice, 2 days, 20,000 steps each, and I felt like I didn't see everything. I didn't see a lot. I definitely didn't get to sit and kind of feel out too many vehicles. But it's always a little bit hectic. And Friday was the official media day. There were hundreds or a couple hundred media press events, and so. But when media day starts, the show is pretty much half over because companies like CATL, Volkswagen Group, they had brand nights, and that's where they launch a lot of their vehicles and unveil them. And then in the media days, they just kind of reiterate what they've said a day before or 2 days before. CATL also had an event. Geely had an event. BYD, did BYD have an event? I don't remember. Oh, Cadillac had an event launching the Vistic. And a lot of pomp and circumstance, stuff we do not see in the US auto shows. The US auto shows, I was talking to someone earlier today. They said that they just don't really participate. They participate half-heartedly. The legacy automakers here, they're fully engaged. It's the largest passenger vehicle market in the world. They need these sales to maintain their credibility globally, and they invest in the booths, and it's a pretty significant part of their marketing strategy for the world and for China. So.
Wow. So you'd said like about 100 press conferences just in that one media day?
Maybe I'm exaggerating, but there's a lot,
A lot.
because there's also tier ones that are doing press conferences.
Okay.
And then technology companies that are partners with some of the OEMs, they're doing media press conferences. And maybe it's not in one day, maybe it's over the 2 days, Friday and Saturday. And then starting on Saturday or Sunday, they're industry days. But the industry days, you can buy a ticket to. So families start going after Friday, and it gets a little bit hectic on Saturday and Sunday. So I try to avoid the public days and just do everything I need to do and talk to people, look at the cars, get a feel for the energy levels at each of the booths, how much foot traffic is going through them, and kick the tires on some really cool cars.
Great, great. How was the buzz in the crowd? Was the crowd level in on terms of the media day the same as last year? Any difference in the feel, attitude, optimistic, pessimistic?
So the Beijing Auto Show got really, really big. So the the show feels roomier and less crowded, but that's also because there's so much more square meters and square footage. So Shanghai's a smaller show now, and because of that, things felt a little more crowded. But that being said, BYD and Cherry, they each occupied their own hall, if you can
Wow.
believe that.
Yeah.
That's something that a Volkswagen Group or even a General Motors would have done 10 years ago, because they had Buick, they had Chevrolet, they had Cadillac, they had all these different brands. But now it's, Ford, shell of itself, and at the China Motor Show, pretty small booth. Cadillac, decent sized booth, fairly small, but it was well designed. They had a F1 theme, so I think a lot of excitement because of that. And then they had some interactive features of the booths, and I think that's why it was one of the award-winning booths this year.
Great, great. Well, let's talk hardware. There were a lot of vehicle debuts, a lot of production stuff. Some things have been kind of, previewed ahead of time, like the little smart concept. Some stuff turned out to be rather surprising. What were your big five vehicles that most impressed you and most significant at the show?
So there are a lot of large SUVs. My favorites were the ES8, the Neo ES8. I'm a big fan of the Zeekr design as well. So there's 007 GT. These are production cars, by the way.
Mhm.
Some of the concepts that I really, really liked were the Xiaomi Grand Vision, I want to say. Very, very clean. Xiaomi, for those that don't know, which many of you probably do now because Jim Farley has yelled their name from the
Yeah.
rafters. They only have two products. They're going to ship likely over 500,000 units. So their automotive division is less than 5 years old. And you compare and contrast that to Rivian and Lucid. So these guys are moving.
And they
And
just they just turned a profit, right?
well, you
Or
mean Xiaomi?
Xiaomi just turned or just did got a little more black ink on the books fairly quickly.
Well, Xiaomi is a technology company, so they're
Well, yes.
technically a 16-year-old company, so they're profitable from from their uh, from their other products and other businesses. But um, you know, let's so I did what I did yesterday and today is I borrowed a Li Auto i6 in with my co-host for trying to use Evisa more Leishing. We drove it or we let it drive us from Beijing and Shanghai. We used their level 2 plus called NOA. And on the way down, there were a ton, let's say six, seven, eight, nine trucks full of Xiaomi's coming from Beijing. So still a lot of demand for that vehicle. And eerily absent from the show was Tesla. But you know, Adam, the theme was large SUV. The theme
Mhm.
was, in my opinion, uh, the Chinese companies being much more mature. And you could tell via the design of the booths, via the cohesiveness of the product lineup, and the confidence level that when you talk to people at the show that were representing each of these brands, that they're ready to take on the world. And there was, unfortunately, not a ton of American executives here, which is kind of disappointing. Um, there are a lot of Western and US media and KOLs, but
Mhm.
just not a lot of executives, which is a bit concerning because you would think that they would want to see the latest and greatest of
Yeah.
what they're not competing against.
Given
So
how vocal Jim Farley has been about the Chinese EVs, I'm kind of surprised there wasn't a contingent of Ford executives there, especially with the new product creation organization checking out stuff. And I know GM think GM has started to turn around some of their Chinese presence. I think it sounds like they made a little more money this quarter than they did a year ago. So, but I know in the past they've sent groups of execs to see things, but it sounds like maybe not so much this year.
Well, Marion Rice were there last year or here in Shanghai, technically. So, um, I'm disappointed Sterling Anderson didn't come. Uh, Alan Clark wasn't here,
Wow.
and or at least that not that I know of. I could be
Mhm.
wrong, but that I didn't hear any rumors about them coming. Now, who I did hear, and what a lot of people are getting ready for is Trump. He's supposed to be coming to China in the next couple of weeks, and so I think a lot of companies here are anticipating some sort of announcement, whether they have an idea of what Trump is going to say and do, I'm not sure, right? But they're expecting some sort of announcement, either some reinforcement of restrictions and or some non-commitment of yeah, come on over.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Uh,
Yeah.
uh, but I do know this: that the pressure will be tremendous once Chinese vehicles enter Canada. And the latest I've heard is that BYD is going to be homologated before the end of this year, and Geely towards the beginning of next. So
And
it's coming quickly. It's coming quickly.
do we think they enter China, enter Canada through the traditional dealer model, or would they try to do the direct sale? I don't know if there's as many restrictions in Canada as are on the US on that, but
I think they're kicking the tires and they're talking to dealers,
talking to dealers.
for sure, for sure. Geely could really leverage the Volvo network in Canada,
Yeah.
so there's an opportunity for them to do that. And I think, if you look at where Stellantis might play, is that Brampton, Ontario factory. I don't think that Leap Motor vehicles will be built, but maybe a rebadged Leap Motor that has a Fiat logo on it potentially. Those are kind of the scenarios that I think are going to play out over the next 12, 14, 18 months.
Yeah. You mentioned the large SUVs that I saw an article that talked about how many of them have the number nine, like ES9 and Li Auto and it does nine have a cultural significance within China at all, or they just figure
Well,
this
it's
is the
the
biggest
largest
number,
number.
largest
Yeah,
number.
it's the biggest number. But they the ones that have launched vehicles with an eight already, some of them are um, adding a trim. So, for instance, Ito, which is a Huawei brand, is it has an M8, and they're going to build an M8L, which is extended wheelbase or long
Mm.
wheelbase. So, and this is what's really, really, what I really want to emphasize. These are US style SUVs, Adam. They're not the Chinese like at big SUVs, and you know because this is what you've studied, in your past careers. Those are unique to the United States, and they're going to be unique to China. No one else, except maybe the Middle East, can take a handful of them, but not many. Um, but I don't think they're just designing them for China. Let me just
Right, right, right. Yeah, they're definitely going to be too big for Europe. So, and China is big on exporting because they got so much excess capacity. So, yeah, they are definitely building US sized vehicles there. And yeah, you see some of the numbers and it's the size of a standard Tahoe or Escalade. It's not as big as an Escalade IQ yet, but again, there's opportunities to go even bigger with some of that. And then with all the technology and all the bells and whistles that you expect when you spend that much money. Um,
Oh well, the ES8 and the ES9 are some of the most premium vehicles for under 60,000, 65,000 US dollar. It is absolutely insane, Adam, what type of value you can get. Americans, barring the fact that, if there's anti-China sentiment on brands and things like that, most Americans would be extremely impressed. And the Tahoe would look like a Tesla interior. compared to some of these vehicles. I'm talking passenger seats, captain seats that recline, that massage, high definition screens on the back of the headrest, the standard. I mean, for $65,000.
Yeah.
So the Chinese consumer is spoiled because they can pick whatever they want with whatever range they want and however fast it charges for anything under $25,000. And
Yeah.
so that's the God's honest truth. Now, it's also one of the reasons most Chinese EV companies aren't profitable, but that's why they're entering foreign markets too. So, but their knives are sharpened in China for sure.
Yeah. What about high performance EVs? You don't normally associate Chinese with sports cars at all, but it seemed like there were the Denza Z and the Fangchengbao Formula X, and there were a couple of other genuine like Ferrari Corvette style sports cars there, either EREV or plug-in hybrid or EV. Is this something that the Chinese are starting to kind of expand into?
So I'll one up you on that, Adam. BYD broke the Nürburgring record that was held by what was it? A Bugatti.
Wow.
So a BYD vehicle went 308 miles an hour,
Wow.
an electric vehicle. So electric democratizes speed and performance. So those people that you know, Adam, and I know that poo-poo electric, they don't like speed. They like nostalgia. They like the
Hmm.
smell of gas, but they
Yep.
don't like speed because if they like speed, they would like electric. Full stop.
Yep.
So you call bullshit on those guys when they tell you they don't like electric cars because of some noise or some this, then you don't like fast cars, guy. You don't like fast cars. Full stop. Because and this is one of the reasons Porsche should be, you know, uh, Porsche has an existential crisis. If you went to the Porsche booth, because if one of my friends kind of framed it this way. Let's take 911 and make that a separate brand, okay? Because it's a great separate single brand. And then we look at Porsche. In China and in the United States, with the exception of the 911, Porsche is an SUV brand. And in China, more than 50% of Porsche sales go to women. Now,
Really?
if you go to a Porsche booth, you would never know that. Never know that.
Huh.
And that's a lost opportunity for Porsche because within the last, 6 or 7 years, they went from 92,000 units sold in China, which is more than 30% of their global sales, to 40,000.
Yeah. Yeah. They've had a lot of troubles there.
And the United States is not going to take 50,000 more units. That's
No.
for sure. Europe is down as well. And this is even before Xiaomi enters the European market. Now, Xiaomi, to your point, Adam, and I'm jumping around, so my apologies, but Xiaomi makes the SU7 Ultra, which is a track car, and it is bonkers. It is absolutely
Like
ridiculous.
1,200 horsepower,
So,
thereabouts.
yeah. So the BYD vehicle is 700 horsepower per e-motor, and there's four e-motors on that vehicle. And so everything is getting turned on its head. If I may go back to the Li Auto i6 uh, that drove me down here, um, it's a $35,000 midsize crossover. I won't call it an SUV. Fit and finish, it's a very simple interior, but the fit and finish is very high quality. It wouldn't be it wouldn't stand out in a Mercedes lineup in a bad way for sure. And so the Chinese, from affordability standpoint, have nailed the fit and finish part. And then on top of that, we went to a supercharger station, a Li Auto fast charging station. and plugged it in. It was pulling 420 kilowatts,
Wow.
and it went from 10% to 90% in about 12 or 14
Oh,
minutes.
wow.
So a quick story. We stopped, we plugged it in, and then we were going to grab lunch real quick, go to the bathroom, have lunch, thinking, okay, by the time we're done, it'll be done. So my friend goes back and gets his water bottle to refill some water. And so we went to the bathroom. He goes back to his car. And by the time he goes back to his car, it was done. So he unplugged it and pulled it up. And I had just bought my food. And so rather than be impatient and having to wait for the charge, I was feeling rushed to eat fast so I could get back on the road. So the car made me feel
Wow.
rushed, basically. Um, and during this auto show, BYD and CATL said, you know what? 420 kilowatts, that's nothing. That's too slow. So they're both, so that's a 5 seat
Yep.
charger. BYD and CATL, they're at 10 and 12 seat.
Yeah. Yep. I saw the
Um,
announcements past couple of weeks.
so literally as fast as gas. And, legacy automakers want to make ICE cars.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and, and the so the other thing that was really cool was BYD had a booth within a booth, and they had a frozen, almost like an enclosed garage, and they showed in what sub-zero -30 degree temperature, a guy was wearing like an Eskimo suit, and he had a warm pitcher of water to show us because he would just pour it out in the air,
Oh,
and
and it
it
would
turned
freeze.
into ice, right? And so he's showing us how fast it's charging and its
Wow.
ability to charge in those weather conditions. And so um, it is like the challenges are significant.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, which automaker do you think had the strong, or automakers, if you had a couple, had the strongest showing? I know Hyundai announced the big $1.1 billion investment, 20 new vehicles. Now they're now bringing Ionics to China, and they're not the same Ionics that we're getting. They're a whole different series of Ionics. They seem like they had a pretty strong presence with some strong product. What did you think of what Hyundai showed, or was there any other automaker that really stood out as above the crowd and having a positive future?
Yeah, Hyundai. I mean, it's to show you the importance of the China market, Munoz was here, okay, and he was the person that was speaking.
Hmm.
And but to answer your question, now Hyundai has had challenges historically in the China market. Some of them are a decent amount of the challenges are non-product related.
Yeah,
I think
cultural.
some of them are political, to be quite frank. And for them to show that commitment to the China market, it tells you something. The foreign automakers, generally speaking, the only way they try to get and claw back any share is if they partner with Chinese partners, um, in order to help them with their hardware software stack, in order to help them design the vehicles. So most automakers now have their own China teams that build, design, engineer cars for the China market with Chinese employees. That's helpful, but um, the trend is that in order to be competitive or try to be competitive, not even be competitive, try to be competitive is to partner. Volkswagen had a lot of foot traffic because they showed off the Unix and the Era, the Unix being the large SUV, US style SUV,
Mhm.
which is kind of uncharacteristic. If you looked at it and didn't see the logo, you wouldn't think it's a
Yeah.
Volkswagen, for sure. And then the Era is like a sedan, a large sedan, very priced very aggressively, and they're using XPeng, last gen XPeng platform. So they're paying XPeng a licensing fee. they also happen to own 5% of XPeng. And so, the trend, I think the important trend, and this goes back to your question, um, some of it is about the cars. Neo had a strong booth. They had all three of their brands there, the Neo brand, the Firefly brand, and the Anvo brand. Last night, William Lee, who's the founder, CEO of Neo, he showed off an L80. You're talking about those eights and nines
Yep,
again,
yep.
Adam. So an L80 is effectively um, a stripped down version of an ES8. Because an ES8, I think, Adam, you'd be like, man, this is probably $150,000 car in the US market. And an ES8 is like 56 or
Wow.
$58,000 here in China. And famously, BY or Neo is also the company that does battery swapping. And so you can get a vehicle cheaper if you don't buy the battery and you lease it from them
Hmm.
as a service, monthly service fee. So Neo had a really, really cool booth. I really like that. It was impressive to have BYD have an entire hall,
Yeah, we got all the brands to
um,
showcase. So,
and Stella Lee, who's the head of international and basically Wang Chuanfu's right hand woman, she was making her rounds in international media because they just had their earnings this morning or last night. Not good, not great. And, that's also a big reason why BYD is diversifying because they know the intensity of the China market is not for the faint of heart. And, they're trying to balance the China market with the opportunity and the growth of the international markets. Now, one significant thing that Stella emphasized across different interviews was that their charging is what differentiates them from everybody else. And another example, and what was really cool, and maybe I'm a little biased because I was able to also go down to Guangzhou and visit XPeng's headquarters. They showed off their eVTOL. They have this large, let's say, almost pseudo semi type of van that um,
oh, it stores it
transports
in
an
there. Yes.
eVTOL. Yeah. And so they showed us the eVTOL and they give us a demo of a woman piloting the eVTOL on their campus. Uh, we did a tour of where the eVTOL is getting built. And so one of the things that is notable as well about Xpeng is that they changed their Chinese name, their company name from Xpeng Motors, I want to say, to Xpeng Group.
Oh, okay.
And if you remember about 20 years ago, Apple Computer changed its name to Apple Inc. And think along those lines. They
Yep.
want you to
Starting to
think that
diversify.
they want you to think that they're a technology company and not a car company. And one of the biggest themes was that many booths had humanoids. So there are EV companies, Chinese EV companies that are dabbling. Many
Yeah.
of them design their own silicon. Okay. And so um, it's not unusual the impression I got is that we're not going to be able to make a lot of money selling EVs. So
Hmm.
we're going to diversify out of EVs so that maybe. So another example is Xpeng designs its own silicon, and they're probably going to sell it to Volkswagen
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
some of their vehicles. So, there are revenue generating opportunities, hopefully, as they diversify out. And I'm talking more than Xpeng because other companies are doing similar things. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
We're coming up on the end of our time here. I did want to ask, was there anything that surprised you? I mean, especially given all your experience in the business, there's probably not a lot, but anything you thought you'd see that you didn't, or anything that showed up that really took you for a loop?
there wasn't any like surprising, like holy cow kind of moments or gotcha moments or anything like
Mm,
that in this one. Not that, not that I can recall.
okay.
And it's just almost like a business as usual mentality. So
Hmm.
I won't say it wasn't boring. at all, but just wasn't like that level of surprise anymore. Um,
Yeah.
it's still the coolest auto show in the world that I think if you're a car nerd, you got to come to. Next year, it's going to be in Shanghai, one of my favorite cities in the world. And so it, it's just amazing. Uh, and this is a through line because again, I need to really place the emphasis on the maturity of the brands now and the companies and the large SUVs. You know, that is that almost everyone has one is a pretty significant difference between last year and this year.
Great, great. This has been great. I think we probably could have gone on for like another 30 minutes or so, but what we'll do is we'll wrap it up now. Looks like we had 50 or 60 folks observing, so thank you for signing in. Tell your friends that we will be posting the recording of this to our SAA LinkedIn page. So we didn't have time for a Q&A today, obviously because we had so much to discuss, but we will be taking questions there on the page. And two, thanks for very much for joining us. Safe travels back to the US, and we'll all look for your additional reports on the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. Have a good morning.
All right. See y'all.